Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lecture 1, Chapter 1 of Sociology. If you've been in my classes before, this one is run very much the same. I will do about a 10-15-minute video lecture, and then there'll be some activities. And so basically the chapter lectures are broken up into 10-15 minutes. Sometimes they go over little sections. But let's go ahead and jump right in. What is sociology about? So I also teach, I'm considered the social science researcher, or the social science instructor here. And really, all the social sciences have very similar goals, and that goal is to understand human behavior from different perspectives. So understand, make predictions, maybe intervene, right? But that's basically the goal of all social sciences, is to understand human behavior. The difference between a sociological perspective, say, and a psychological perspective, or any of the other perspectives, is really like what we're looking at, or the level of analysis, if you will. So I like to say that psychology and sociology they have the same goal, but they're at different ends of the continuum. Way down at the psych end of the continuum, we're trying to understand human behavior from the perspective of the individual, from the perspective of the brain cell. I mean, in psychology, they'll do experiments on one person, right? Or on one case, and we'll draw conclusions about human behavior from one case. Sociology takes a very, very significantly different perspective and says there ain't no such thing as the individual. Matter of fact, that's an exam question. That's a quiz question. What does it mean to say there's no such thing as an individual? What that means is that the individual is, yeah, sure, we're all individual people, right? But the individual is a compilation, is a product of all of their social forces, of all of the other interactions, of all of the other things that have happened to them. So my point is this is one way to try to understand human behavior. There are a variety of other ways, but I'm going to be talking from, throughout the semester from that perspective, from what we call the sociological perspective. And we're going to be looking at patterns amongst large groups of people. We're not going to be talking about the individual. There may be individuals in some of our examples that don't conform to the pattern, right? But those are what we call an ecological fallacy. We're not interested in the individual experience. We're interested in what are the patterns when I get a whole bunch of people together. What do I see over and over and over again? Sometimes, in order to do this, it requires what's called the sociological imagination. And this is a very important idea, the sociological imagination. Matter of fact, I will be evaluating you on your ability to take this different perspective. And sometimes you can think of it as sort of like the difference between somebody who's a really good artist and somebody who's really creative. This sociological imagination will probably come easy for some. For some people, it'll be like, oh yeah, I totally get it. I've noticed that my whole life. And other people will be like, yeah, I don't see it that way. I don't get it that way, right? But again, my challenge to you is try to use that imagination. And while we may be trying to understand one person in a system, I invite you to take the larger perspective. Sometimes I use the example of, so once upon a time when we first moved to Kansas, we first moved up to this part of the state, we lived out in the country. And in the country, I didn't have neighbors, for like a mile each direction. And I could sit on my hammock and I could see a big expanse of the sky. Right? I saw a big picture, and you could see storms moving in from off of a distance, and you could see it raining over there. It's kind of like when you're driving down the highway, right, in Western Kansas, you get to see this big picture phenomenon. Well, we moved to town, we moved by the city park, and I stand out on my back porch now, but I have all of these trees, and all I can really see is this little square in the sky, right? I can't see the big picture. I'm looking at the exact same sky I looked at when I was out in the country, but it looks really different. I don't have as much information. So that's what the sociological imagination asks you to do, is to take this big picture perspective, right? To look at the whole sky. And so one way you can think about that is you can think of it like the social context, the situation, not just that one tree in the forest, right? But the forest, right? Now we will notice one tree. We'll notice that one tree is dying. We'll notice that one individual is struggling. But the social imagination says, notice what's going on around the tree, right? What is the social concept? What is the social context? I will come back to this over and over and over again throughout the rest of the semester. Okay, another really important term is what we call your social location. So much like that analysis I was here, just much like that example I used just a second ago about the tree is located, has a specific location in the forest, the same way that you do, right? You were located somewhere in the social structure. You're planted somewhere, right? We're going to be talking about the social location as being, or society, like this is the forest. And the forest is shaped kind of like a triangle, right? You have, and at the top of the triangle, you have a handful of very powerful people and a whole bunch of less powerful people at the bottom. But we're all planted somewhere in here. That is our location. Chances are, though, we are located where we are planted is similar. We are similar to those people who are around us, right? We live in a neighborhood where the houses are similar to our house, where people, maybe they look like us, maybe probably we all speak the same language. They're probably of similar economic backgrounds as ourselves. Occasionally, you may find a tree in a grove, and that tree grove is over there, and why is this specimen doing here? So occasionally you might find like a wealthy person living in a poor neighborhood. That's not terribly common, but you're probably not going to find like a poor person living in a wealthy neighborhood, right? So your social location. The three, and you'll hear me talk about this over and over and over again. The three big aspects of social location, and this is a quiz question, are race, class, and gender. You should not get out of a sociology class without understanding what sociologists mean by race, class, and gender. So we'll have a whole chapter assigned to, and the idea is that our location is influenced in part by these three components of these three parts of our social location. Why it matters, and I realize this is the wrong word here, it should not be life outcomes, it should be life chances. Why your location matters and why we're going to talk about it over and over again is like that tree I was just talking about. Where you're planted, quite literally where you're born, influences how much chance, how much light you might possibly get, the chances that you are going to go to a quality school, the chances that your parents are going to have good jobs, the chances that you might get a fungal infection from the soil that you're in, the chances you're going to get enough light. Your social location matters. It predicts, and that's what sociologists are about, right? Sociologists are about identifying those patterns, identifying the patterns where the people who are planted over here, what does their life look like? The people that are planted up here, what are their chances, right? What are your chances of being exposed to COVID? What are your chances of having nutritious food on the table? And that's where theory is important. And I'll get to theory in just a second. Okay, another important idea that comes from the social location of the sociological imagination is this one right here, what we talk about: connect personal biography with history. We are always wanting to apply this stuff to ourselves. And what the sociologist argues is your experience is really not any different than anybody else's, right? That other people who happen to be in that same place in society at that same time in society probably have similar experiences. So our culture tells us that you are responsible for yourself. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Only you, right? Only you are responsible for the outcome. And what sociologists argue is there's some truth to that, but that's only part of the explanation. The rest of the explanation has to do with social forces. For instance, take the example of, the pandemic, when all the restaurants and businesses closed, lots of people suddenly became unemployed. Their personal troubles, they became unemployed, didn't have the money for rent anymore, but there were large social forces, right? People didn't just wake up one day and say they don't want to go to work, but the social forces had personal implications. And that's what sociology is all about. It's about understanding how the larger forces, how the social structure, right, the social context, your social location, have implications for how you experience life and for the chances that you will find in your life based on your location. And I'm going to stop right there because it's been 10 minutes.